Good morning, friends. It's time for another virus vacation story. And today's story is Rosie Revere, Engineer, by Andrea Beatty and illustrated by David Roberts. Remember, the title gives us a clue to what the story is about. The author is the person who wrote the book, and the illustrator drew the pictures. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Green's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. I think if you look at the pictures, you might guess which one is Rosie. She's the only one not talking. If you guessed this one, you were right. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. Maybe that would have been ants, so it rhymed. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head, from parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud. But Fred slapped his knee and he chuckled out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat and then looked away. "I love it," Fred hooted. "Oh, truly I do." But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day, kept her dreams to herself. And that's how it went until one autumn day, her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great-great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo who'd worked building airplanes a long time ago. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and goals she had checked off her list one by one. She gave a sad smile as she looked to the sky. "The only thrill left on my list is to fly. But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams." That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, "No, not I." But questions are tricky, and some hold on tight. And this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly. She worked and she worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her cheese copter out onto the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The Hello Cheese copter sputtered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the old woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed till she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, oh no, never, not ever again will I try to build something to sputter or spin or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear. And never will I be a great engineer. She turned round to leave, but then Great-Aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. You did it! Hooray! It's the perfect first try! This great flop is over. It's time for the next. Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. I failed, said dear Rosie. It's just made of trash. Didn't you see it? The cheesecopter crashed. Yes, said her great aunt. It crashed, that is true. But first it did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew. Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next. She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rose tied her headscarf around Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with a smile ear to ear, to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 build gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. With each perfect failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. And that's the end. But one of the things I wanted to do with this story is go back and look at some of these words, because some of them you might not know, and they help make the story a little clearer. So on this page, it says Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. What are eaves? Well, eaves are the slanty part of your roof. So she's hiding up high in the house. And here we talk about gadgets and gizmos. What's a gadget or a gizmo? Well, exactly what Rosie is making. Little machines that do specific jobs. Helium is the special kind of gas that makes things float. And you can see her uncle is floating. Here's a python. We talked about the python. And here, where Rosie's uncle laughs, there's some words here. She's embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. We all know what feeling embarrassed feels like. What's being perplexed? Perplexed means you're not sure what is going on. You're a little confused. And dismayed means you're unhappy with how things are going. Her great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo. What does dynamo mean? It means you're a person who works hard. And Rosie's aunt Rose was a dynamo. She worked on airplanes a long time ago. All right, let's see if there's another word in here that might be confusing. Flop. We know that we can flop down on the floor, but when we talk about an action being a flop, it means it didn't work. Look at that. Here's her Helio cheesecopter, and here's the crash. Here we go. A raging success means that something is really, really successful. There you go. And Rosie is dreaming that she will be an engineer. And an engineer is someone who builds or creates things. And all of you can be engineers too and make a gizmo or a gadget. I hope you have a great day creating.